Roughly 90% of America's fresh tomatoes are sourced from Mexico. That's over $3 billion quietly flowing across the border until everything changed. On July 14, 2025, without forewarning or a transitional cushion, the U.S. government abruptly imposed a 17% duty on every Mexican tomato shipment. No announcements, no deliberations, just a terse policy notice and resounding silence. Weeks later, the consequences rippled across grocery stores. In Raleigh, North Carolina, prices surged more than 40%. At one store, a mother lifted a tomato, hesitated, and put it back. Restaurants removed salsa from menus. School lunches lost their color. In households across America, a hushed question echoed. What just happened? This wasn't about agriculture. It wasn't about justice. This was a rupture, a signal. Overnight, the humble tomato became political. That single July decision quietly redrew the blueprint of North American produce trade. Washington officially dismantled the 2019 tomato suspension agreement with Mexico, a trade pact that had once cushioned prices and ensured steady supply. For years, that agreement served as a release valve. When tensions rose, it kept dialogue intact and commerce stable. But this time, no negotiation tables were set. No committees convened. Just a press release and a hardline 17% import tax. Effective immediately. As Axios and ABC News reported, there was no phase-in period. Tomatoes already en route were hit at the border. Importers felt blindsided. Economists warned of recklessness. Grocers braced for upheaval. Within 2 months, tomato prices spiked between 30% and 45% in major U.S. cities. In Raleigh, beefsteak tomatoes climbed from $2.99 to $4.35 per pound. In Los Angeles, Roma tomatoes, once under $1, now hovered above $3.80. To working-class families, this wasn't mere inflation, it was a financial blade. School cafeterias cut tomatoes from lunch trays. Fast food outlets swapped fresh salsa for mass-produced paste. And in countless kitchens, tomato sauce was watered down, stretched just a little further. But the economic fallout extended far beyond grocery receipts. In Florida, dozens of small, lading-sewn import businesses collapsed under the pricing shock. Unable to withstand the margin hit, they shuttered. Hundreds of Latino warehouse staff, drivers, and agricultural brokers, many with decades of experience, were laid off. Their livelihoods, once essential to U.S.-Mexico food trade, were discarded without compensation or even a statement. Experts were floored. Policy shifts had been anticipated, but not this abrupt. A July 2025 MarketWatch report warned that the tomato supply chain's breakdown could cascade into packaging, refrigeration, and trucking sectors, strangling small logistics firms and inflating grocery costs nationwide. Washington's rationale? To shield American farmers. But shield whom, exactly? Florida's tomato production is seasonal. Northern states like New York and Illinois rely heavily on imports. And California's harvests have been shrinking for years due to drought and labor challenges. So the question sharpened, was this policy about farming or politics? Mexico didn't challenge the tariff. They simply circumvented it with quiet resolve. As Washington courted headlines, Mexico drafted blueprints. No fiery press conferences. No retaliation. Just action and steel rails. Engineers and supply chain planners mobilized. Within 3 months, a new export corridor took shape methodically, far from U.S. scrutiny. Freight trains now depart from Bio, Mexico's agricultural heartland, cutting through Chihuahua before turning east straight into Ontario and Quebec. No American checkpoints. No customs delays. No tariffs. It's a cold chain marvel built not in defiance but in foresight. Temperature-controlled containers sealed, pressurized, and sensor-monitored preserve tomatoes, berries, and peppers at a crisp 1 degree Celsius, even across 2,000 kilometers. The result? Up to 5 extra days of shelf life. Lower spoilage. Fewer rejected loads. Cheaper transport. Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CPKC, confirmed, this rail line cuts logistics costs by 15% compared to U.S. trucking. While America penalized the tomato, Mexico re-engineered it. What seemed like a temporary bypass became permanent. Canadian retail giants, Loblaws, Metro didn't just tour Mexican farms. They inked 5-year contracts. Every northbound freight now sends a quiet signal, Mexico isn't returning to the old system. No rebuttal from Mexico's trade ministry. No viral hashtags. Just locomotives, filled with produce, crossing unfamiliar borders. One Ottawa trade advisor put it bluntly. They didn't resist the tariff. They evolved beyond it. And what stings U.S. officials most is not just the product migration, it's the erosion of confidence. Buyers who once routed everything through Texas now invest in cold storage near Montreal and Toronto. Ports in California and Arizona are handling less. Back in the U.S., farmers, retailers, and families watch trains pass, not with outrage, but puzzlement. Because there was no dramatic confrontation. Mexico didn't scale the wall. They tunneled underneath, with precision, not protest. And that tunnel may be permanent. According to Bloomberg Green, by 2026, 48% of Mexico's fresh tomato exports will head for Canada, up from less than 1% 2 years ago. And it's not just tomatoes, strawberries, avocados, bell peppers, all rerouted. Not to the U.S., but northward to Canada. No declarations. Just contracts. While U.S. tariffs made noise, Canada made deals with growers, not diplomats. Executives from Canadian supermarket chains toured farms in Guanajuato and Jalisco. They tested the soil. Inspected irrigation. Tasted the crops. Then they signed 5-year supply agreements locked through 2030. No threats. No reversals. Just logistical reliability. A Metro supply director summed it up. We don't base contracts on election cycles. That one sentence resonated. While Washington swings policy every 4 years, Ottawa honors deals across decades. That quiet consistency transformed Canada from a secondary player into a strategic trade anchor. According to July 2025 FreightWaves data, Mexico's exports to Canada could hit 48% of volume by next year, up from nearly zero. Avocados, strawberries, peppers, all bypassing U.S. ports. All headed to Canadian hubs from Quebec City to Vancouver. In contrast, U.S. import numbers tell a bleaker story. Data from Atools, a supply chain analytics firm, shows wholesale tomato prices surged 22% in July alone. Retailers blamed tariffs, inspection gridlocks, and unpredictable federal enforcement. It's like playing roulette with perishables, one Florida manager said. Meanwhile, Canada enjoys an 8% lower average landed cost per crate thanks to smoother logistics and fewer delays. Across border towns, from Buffalo to El Paso, U.S. import firms are shutting down. A tomato distributor in McAllen, Texas laid off 74 employees in June. Just across the line in Windsor, Ontario, a new refrigerated facility opened, fully booked into 2026. This wasn't just a tariff. It was a kitchen tax. Maria, a single mother in New Jersey, used to buy fresh tomatoes weekly. At $4 per pound, she switched to canned beans. Cheaper. Saltier. Shelf-safe. Her son doesn't notice now. But his health might one day. In Laredo, Texas, Tom, a retired welder, says produce aisles now feel like luxury boutiques. What used to cost $20 a week now pushes him toward frozen food. In Detroit, the Wilsons depend on SNAP. With $173 to stretch, they've dropped tomatoes and avocados and peppers. No fresh salads in 3 weeks. Just slaw and potatoes. This wasn't an accident. It was a policy. And its fallout landed not in D.C. debate halls, but in lunchboxes and sinks across America. Axios and ABC News confirmed that average U.S. tomato prices climbed 30 to 45% within weeks. Some grocers reported 60% jumps on premium varieties. Fast food. Chains quietly pulled salsa and pico de gallo. Even schools felt it. In Illinois, a school replaced tomato wedges with prepackaged lettuce. One teacher said, "The kids noticed. They asked where the red went." Because when policy fails, color vanishes from the plate. A $4 tomato isn't just expensive, it's symbolic. It's a stress test of leadership, priorities, and dignity. The tariff was pitched as support for U.S. farmers. But those farmers still face climate, labor, and water stress. Instead of solutions, they got headlines. And consumers? They're paying for someone else's trade war. In low-income neighborhoods, a missing tomato is more than lost flavor. It's a quiet humiliation. An invisible blow to what it means to eat with pride in America. Yes, the tariff targeted foreign producers. But it landed right here, on kitchen counters, in lunch bags, in every diluted bite. If tomatoes can escape America, what else might follow? It began with produce. But by late July, European logistics giants were already rerouting goods away from U.S. ports. In Portugal, Brazil sealed a 5-year deal to supply organic vegetables directly, no U.S. involvement. And Colombia, Peru? They redirected exports to Vancouver and Halifax. But the clearest signal came from Asia. In August, delegations from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan visited Sadero, not for diplomacy, but to study Mexico's independence from U.S. dependency. One Korean advisor called it, the new playbook for resilience. Japanese and German firms are now eyeing Mexico's tech zones as alternative gateways for Asian exports, sidestepping U.S. policy altogether. And Canada? Already adjusting. In Ontario, Agricorp began dual language labeling, rebranding Mexican tomatoes as product of Canada under USMCA. One Canadian official put it plainly. If the U.S. brings chaos, we'll offer reliability. Because this isn't about tomatoes anymore. It's about trust, supply stability, and trade without political whiplash. Even the European Central Bank warned in July. Strategic sectors, autos, semiconductors, biotech, may begin shifting away from U.S.-centered routes. The world isn't boycotting America. They're sidestepping it. Quietly. Methodically. Permanently. Because today it's tomatoes. Tomorrow, it might be microchips. Mexico didn't exit in protest. They exited with precision. Canada didn't compete. They opened the door and kept it open. And American shoppers? They're paying more for less, still told it's about protecting farms. But maybe this isn't about agriculture anymore. Maybe it's the first fracture in something much bigger. Is this just a fruit fight, or the unraveling of U.S. global trade?